Hello, Michigools! Thanks for joining us again. Sorry it's taken so long to get back to recording and editing and putting out the podcast. Turns out quarantine plus my computer breaking equals Kay can't get anything done in any aspect of life. I'm sure a lot of you are feeling the same. But I have a new computer. Hooray. Thank you, friends. Our stay-at-home order has been lifted. Crysta and I are getting together soon to plan out season 2. It's going to be awesome. So please hang around for that sometime in early October. And here is just a little interview with Crysta and her husband and author, Greg, to talk a little bit about his experiences with the paranormal. Thanks!
So now I'm back. This is Crysta. I'm recording with my husband, Greg, who's on my show now. Although I guess Cinema Guano is also technically my show as well. That's mostly your show, though.
Yeah, it's our show.
Yeah.
I just do most of the work.
You do like all the work, really. So yeah, check out our other podcast, Cinema Guano. But right now we're doing Haunted Mitten from home. Since our governor has said no one's allowed to leave their homes. Essentially, Kay and Aaron are now at their apartment, and Greg and I are at home doing our segment because I wanted to get some of Greg's personal ghostly stories because he's had quite a few experiences as well. What would you like to talk about?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me questions here.
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, I guess, have you had a lot of experiences throughout your life and like when you were a kid? Because I had a lot when I was a kid. I haven't really.
Yeah, not when I was a kid. Mostly when I was like an adolescent, teenager.
Okay, so like if
that age, and then
if
when
you
I
were
was
a
in
mutant,
college.
that's when you were coming into your powers.
Yeah, right.
We're nerds.
Yeah. Yeah, I know the one that Kay Gray wanted us to talk about was.
Yeah, she's utterly fascinated by this. I think it's pretty cool too.
Yeah, was when I was in high school, and it wasn't so much like a ghost experience. I always described it as being like a time slip experience.
And so my understanding of time slip has always been just basically people sort of moving through time or seeing through time. It's actually kind of based on science. The premise being that time is fluid, time is not linear, which most people seem to accept at this point. Truly, that time is kind of happening all at once, and we see it as linear because our feeble brains, that's how they have to process it. It's getting into quantum theory a bit here, but it's really cool, and I find it really fascinating. But there are two prongs to time slip theory that I found. Is that one is people wander into another time. There's a famous one about Marie Antoinette. Two ladies were, walking the grounds in France, and all of a sudden they're walking through the woods, and all of a sudden the people around them are from several hundred years ago, and they're like, is some kind of historical reenactment thing going on here? And no, there was nothing going on, and they kept walking, and suddenly they were back in their own time, so to speak. That's a really famous one. I don't remember all the details. I'll see if I can find it, and I'll link to it later. But then another one being like the Bermuda Triangle, where someone takes off in their plane, they fly for 10 minutes, and all of a sudden they're like 2 hours later, and everyone's going, where the hell have you been for the last 2 hours? And they're like, what are you talking about? It's only been 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That happens a lot too. So that's time slip in a nutshell.
Yeah, I know John Tenney has that time slip story
Oh,
too.
it's fantastic.
Yeah,
I like that story.
Yeah,
I use that as an example a lot, even though it's not my story. It's very much his story.
Yeah. Aaron or A.M. Dean thought that was your story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he was trying to explain the story to me, and I'm like, yeah, Aaron, I know this story. I'm pretty sure I've told you this story.
No, I told him that story when we were talking about just kind of metaphysical stuff for the play when I was doing dramaturgy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Should we tell that story now that we've talked about it?
I think you should probably link to Tenney's telling of that story on his podcast.
That's true. Yeah,
Because I think he's got an episode where he does tell that story.
Yeah, I think he mentions it in his podcast. I'll go find that. He's a great speaker. I think I've talked about him on this podcast before. John E.L. Tenney. Follow him on Twitter. He's hilarious.
Yeah.
He does speak quite a bit around Southeast Michigan area. Weird lectures, I believe, is what it's called. But
yeah,
and
we're not under quarantine.
Yeah, when we're not under quarantine. But he does have some podcast episodes in there worth a listen for sure as well.
And he's also involved with the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal. He's friends with Greg and Dana Newkirk.
Yep.
Who, if you haven't watched Hellier and you are stuck indoors, definitely check that out. It's free on YouTube, both seasons.
Yes. I'm pretty sure it's all free now.
And if you're interested in just like weird paranormal stuff, not necessarily ghosts and things, but just like that subject in general, it's definitely worth a watch.
And they get into some witchcraft stuff too, which is wonderful.
Yeah, they get into
Dana's
witchcraft.
A witch. Is a witch. Hashtag is a witch.
Yeah.
She actually is. She's a modern witch.
Canadian witch.
Ooh, exotic.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's if you're into that. I don't know. I mean, there were no goblins.
Yeah, no goblins. 1 star, no
Spoiler
goblins.
alert.
Oh my god.
I give it 1 star. But no, that is interesting, and they get into technical aspects of things.
Yeah, and it kind of ranges all over from cryptids to UFOs to, paganism and the occult.
Yeah.
To
so some stuff that
conspiracy theories
we may get into later in the podcast.
All
for
kinds
sure.
of,
because we are interested in that stuff too. But yeah, so far we've mostly been concentrating on ghosts, but there's some great paranormal, unusual, weird stories in Michigan as well. We're like a hotspot. It's great.
And they kind of subscribe, and Tenny kind of does too, to more of a pan-paranormal philosophy that, it's all sort of connected. That it's not set like Sasquatch and UFOs and ghosts and things aren't necessarily all different stuff, that they're all kind of connected. And that seems to be a more and more popular theory in the last 10 years, maybe, something along those lines.
Well, I think it kind of was in the beginning, but yeah, I think we've moved away from that. Like, people kind of get in their niches, and they're very happy there. Like, oh, ghosts are all woo-woo. You can't be a ghost. But Bigfoot, now, he's the real deal.
Yeah,
that
Bigfoot's
kind of
legit.
Thing. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, but yeah, all three of them worth a follow, and, Hellier is worth checking out, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So back to your story.
Yeah, back to my story. So I went to high school at a large private school here in Michigan called Cranbrook.
It looks like Hogwarts.
Yeah,
like,
it really does.
Picture Hogwarts, and that's Cranbrook.
Yeah. Which has been around since the 1800s. And it's a pretty, big sprawling campus. They do have, everything, elementary through high school, and then there is also a 2-year arts college that's part of the campus. And then there's an art museum that's part of the arts college, and there is a science museum, which is actually pretty neat. It's kind of geared towards a younger audience, but
it's fun. We've been a few times. The art museum is great, too.
Yeah, the art museum is really neat. They have a lot of rotating art exhibits. That's one of the nice things about that particular museum, is that it changes out a lot, so you can go there again and again. We went there to go and see a punk rock art, not art exhibit, but old posters and zines and all kinds of stuff.
That was albums really you could listen to.
Yeah, albums you could listen to.
It was really cool. It made me feel a little old, but it was really cool. I really liked it.
So yeah, they rotate out a lot, and then they have the original founder's house, Booth House, which you can also take tours of. Booth was the guy who set up the school there as an educational institution. So when you're getting ready to graduate from the high school, one of their traditions is that you have dinner with your class at Booth House. And they separate even though the school is no longer separated into a men's school and a women's school. It used to be that way. I think only the middle school is now separate schools. The high school, everybody goes to class together. But for the dinner, because it's a tradition thing, they do separate you into men's and women's.
Nice.
And the men were all ate dinner. I believe it was in the library.
Ooh.
Yeah, they had these massive tables brought in, and it's super fancy. Like, this is this is pretty kind of elegant, type stuff.
Yeah, out of my league.
Yeah, and all the guys have to, have dinner jackets or whatever.
Wow.
And then afterwards, you reunite with the other half of the class, and you go on a tour of the house. And some of the artwork in Booth House is kind of spooky to begin with. There's a lot of like Art Deco or Art Nouveau snake motif type stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah. Just kind of odds and ends, different, not necessarily pictures and things or portraits or anything, but just different like art pieces that they had that have been preserved from the original owners. So we're going through on this tour, and my friends decide that they want to go and hang back from the tour for a second and check out this little side room that is at the top landing of a staircase going up to the second floor. And they kind of want to, see what's in this room that we had not gone in as part of the tour. So we hang back a couple of feet, and the tour goes around the corner, and they go into this little side room. So the side room turns out to be essentially a long hallway type walk-in closet, and it's got a door on our end, and there's a door on the other end. So presumably there's another, room, a bedroom or something on the other end of that, hallway. But it's all like closet cubbies on either side. And then there's a window that overlooks the grounds on one, along one wall. So they go in there, they come back out, and then I go in there as kind of the last person, I think. And the moment I stepped in there, it was no longer night, it was daytime. And
wow.
There's a little boy, probably like 6 or 8 years old, maybe, in short pants, the blue suit, very clearly from around the 1800s, based on how this kid is dressed. And it's very clear to me that, like, he doesn't know that I'm there, but I'm physically there. This is not like an out-of-body type experience. This is, I'm physically in this place in this time, but this person cannot observe me. And this kid is panicking, and I realize he can't get out. These two doors have shut on him, and he can't get the latch to open, and this kid is freaking out.
Okay.
And this goes on for probably 8 or 10 minutes. I mean, this goes on for a while. And the more
and
he
you're just standing there watching this.
And I'm just standing there, and the more he, like, I'm feeling his panic. I can feel what he's feeling, more than in just an empathetic, way. I mean, I'm really feeling this kid's panic. I'm, and I don't know if part of it was I didn't know how to get out of this situation because I couldn't just back out of the room.
Okay. Was the door shut behind you?
I don't think I ever turned around to look at it, but I got the impression that it was yes, because he couldn't get out.
Because
I was between him and the door.
Now, was there stuff in the cubbies too? Like, was it just a full closet, or was it just the boy? Okay.
Yeah. There was, and I think the stuff in the cubbies, and it's been more than like 20 years since this, this incident. But the stuff in the cubbies was adult clothes. But it still would have been, it was still from that time period. It was still recognizably like anywhere from the late 1800s or early 1920s, somewhere in that.
Okay, like dated.
Yeah, it was very clear. You could tell kind of what the time period was based on what these clothes looked like. And if I remember right, when I looked in the room, there were no clothes in there. It was empty. There was nothing in the closets when my friends were in there.
Yeah, I can't imagine they use the house for too awful much.
No, it's mostly a tourist thing. You can tour and you can kind of walk around the grounds, I think pretty much for free. You can just walk around because the gardens are really neat there. They've got some really beautiful gardens. And this goes on for like 8 or 10 minutes. And I don't think start panicking that I can't get out because I'm still watching this other, like, it doesn't quite register with me immediately what the situation sort of is.
Yeah.
I'm a little too lost to really panic about it yet.
Yeah.
And then after that, it stops, and I'm back in my own time period, and it's nighttime again, and my friends are right there outside the room, and we start catching up, with the rest of the group, and it becomes very clear to me that no time has passed while I was in there. It's only a few seconds have passed that I just popped into the room and came back out.
So your friends they just saw you walk in the room and come
Yeah.
back out again.
Oh yeah, like they did not. And I talked to one of them afterwards who was who was a witch and was into the paranormal and stuff like that, and told him what happened, because by the time I caught back up with him, I was starting to freak out at the end of this tour,
Yeah.
because there's something else that happened at the end of this tour. So we go through the rest of the tour, and then they let us go. And if you were a day student, because they did have dormitories where the boarding students lived, because there's a lot of people from out of the country or out of state or whatever, because it's modeled after an English boarding school.
Yeah.
So I walk out of the house. I go start going to where my car is, and something makes me turn back to look at this house. And when I turn back to look at the house, there's the window for that hallway closet, and in the window I can see there's a figure. There's the outline of a figure, and it's dark in there, so all I can see is the shadow of this figure. And that's it. I've had enough at that point, and I book it, and it's like a mile back to where my car is parked, and I just ran the whole way. And then I don't remember if I called my friend who was a boarding student, or if I, once I got to the car, I calmed down a little bit and then ran over to where his dorm was. I forget. But I didn't know what to make of this situation. I legitimately...
You've never experienced anything like that before?
No.
Yeah, it's not a common phenomenon at all.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't have that kind of weird stuff happen to me when I was a kid or anything. So, but yeah. So that was my time slip experience, and to this day, I still kind of don't know necessarily what to make of it.
Yeah, they seem to be really random. Like, people are just walking along doing their thing, and all of a sudden, they're in a different time period.
Right. Well, and one of the things that was different about this experience from any other time slip experience that I've ever heard was that the kid didn't seem to register that I was there. In every other time slip experience I've ever heard of, the person from the present could interact normally, like you were talking to whoever, with the person that they were observing from the past. That you were in the same place at the same time, and you could talk to that person, and they could respond to you, and you could have a normal conversation.
You were aware of each other. They were aware of each other.
Yeah. So
that's true.
For whatever that's worth.
Yeah, and it could also be that was an impression on the room, because if this kid was panicked, he might have left. There's a theory that ghosts or some ghosts are not ghosts of dead people. They're just impressions. So it's like a memory. It's like watching a videotape. Yeah,
the idea of the stone recordings and that kind of thing.
Yeah, which I do think that Kay and I have talked about on here before.
Yeah, but again, the thing that, as far as I know, is different from that is that the time of day changed. That's
true. Everything changed.
Yeah, that everything changed, and that other people could not observe this. That that my friends were standing right there. It didn't appear to them. They didn't see any of this. One of the theories that I know we've heard Tenny talk about that really interests me is that if you accept that ghosts or other entities can manipulate electromagnetic waves, manipulate electricity, that they can take energy from electronics, because a lot of ghost hunters and things will use EMF meters and will use things like the ghost recorders, any of that stuff.
Technology.
Right. So what is then if you accept that is fact, and I'm not saying that you have to that
is a very popular belief.
Correct. That is a pretty standard belief amongst most ghost hunting groups.
Yeah, it's a pretty big theory.
Yeah.
It's pretty accepted. But.
So if you do accept that, then what's to stop whatever entity it is, or spirit or ghost, from reaching inside your head and messing around with the electrical impulses in your brain and in your body. That when you're able to hear or see or smell something that nobody else in the room can, that you associate with a spirit, that it's not that that smell or that visual or that sound is either A, actually happening in the room independently, nor is it a thing you're just imagining, that it is that spirit messing with the electrical impulses in your brain, triggering you to smell that smell, hear that sound, see that thing.
Yeah.
Even though, and that's why other people in the room can't see it. That doesn't explain kind of the time distortion that I experienced, that this went on for so long, but only...
Well, at least it felt like it went on.
It felt like it went on,
Yeah.
for that long, certainly, yeah.
Did you slip into a pocket dimension for 10 minutes and pop right back out again at the same moment you left? Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. And I've never really talked to anybody about whether or not, they ever experienced anything, because it is kind of a pretty, I'm not going to say stodgy, but it's a very serious institution, and it is not a thing where I would ever, where you would ever write to, the people in charge there and go, hey, do you guys have any interesting ghost stories or anything like that? I will...
Kay will.
Kay will.
As soon as she hears this, she's going to be all over that.
Oh, yeah. There is, however, a book, and I want to say we managed to find excerpts from it at one point, and I think it might be available on Amazon. I would have to double check. But there is a book written by either the son or the grandson of the founder of the school about the ghosts in the church across the street from Booth House, Christ Church, Cranbrook. And supposedly there was one of the, I think, masons of the church, one of the guys who, physically built the church, got walled up in there. And I think that has been since debunked. But
yeah, it's a popular thing.
Yeah. But there is also a story about how once a year there is a parade of spirits that enters the church. And that if you're there at the right time on the right night, that you can observe this parade of spirits into the church. And those are both in this book by, a direct descendant of the original founder of the school.
Yeah.
So there are certainly ghost stories that are attached to the school. I never heard anything about any like the dormitories or other buildings or anything like that as far as that kind of stuff went. I know there is an extensive tunnel, like steam tunnel system underneath.
Yeah, and that's really
there.
Common in Michigan.
Yeah.
Probably most people here are listening in Michigan and they know that, but those listening outside of Michigan, it's really common for academic institutions to have that.
And there's a lot of fountains and things outdoors on campus, so there's a lot of, a pretty extensive like plumbing system that's involved with those fountains and things too.
We talked about the steam tunnels at Michigan State in one of the previous episodes.
Yeah. So yeah, that is my time slip experience there.
Yeah, that's a very unique story.
Yeah, and it's never happened since, in any place that I've ever been. And like I said, I'm curious as to whether or not it's ever happened to anyone else there, or whether anybody else in Booth House has ever, It's certainly old enough that I would expect that it has enough history to it that I would expect.
Enough people have passed through those halls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was some tragedy associated with the family at various points as well. So to the point where like they banned certain things from being built on campus because it reminded them too much of deceased relatives and things like that. So
yeah.
I wouldn't, it's a place that I would expect there to have been, haunting experiences and stuff, certainly.
Yeah. If anybody out there knows anything about ghost stories at Cranbrook, we would love to hear them.
Yeah.
And also if you're in the area, go check it out. It's really pretty.
Yeah, and you can kind of just walk around there,
Yeah. It's the kind of place you can easily imagine being haunted.
Yeah, and really, like it's got an oriental garden. It's got a number of different lakes, one of which is natural, one of which is man-made. It's got a Greek amphitheater there. There is actually an indoor theater that does shows called St. Dunstan's. That is, I think it's technically on the property. And they very frequently will do an outdoor show during the summer at the Greek amphitheater.
Yep, we've seen
property.
a couple there. I
We've
think.
seen one. We know some people who have been in
Yeah.
others. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really neat. That's a fun thing to do in the summer if they let us out.
Yeah. And you can you get to bring a bottle of wine to the theater and just
Yeah.
hang out there, watch theater. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other weird stuff happened to you in your
Like,
life?
I mean, off and on. When I used to work in Dearborn, I swore to God I met the deceased founder, one of the deceased original owners of our company, and literally, legitimately had a conversation with the guy, the
Yeah.
whole thing. And I didn't find out that, I didn't realize who it was because I'd never seen a picture of the guy until shortly after, and I was like, that looks like the guy that I had this conversation with, who said, "Oh yeah, I used to own this business," and he kept trying to get me to give him a deal on something. and I knew the guys who I knew the surviving owners of the business. I knew who they were. I had met them. They were at meetings and things.
Yeah.
So I just chalked it up to some guy who was making up a story that wanted a discount on something.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Like they do. Oh, I'm friends with the owner.
Kind of deal.
I'm
yeah.
friends with the manager.
Yeah.
Sure you are. Yeah.
So this guy insisted, "Oh no, I used to own this business, and this, that, and I knew what the story of the business was." And I was like, "No, you didn't."
Yeah. You can't have.
Yeah, there's no way you had. So
And
yeah,
this was you were just hanging out, working,
Yeah.
stocking shelves
yeah.
or something. Yeah. And this guy just comes up to you and starts talking.
yeah, he wanted a deal on a sprinkler or something. I don't know. Yeah.
That's interesting.
And yeah, I didn't see a picture of what the guy looked like until a little while after that. And that was a little, it took me a minute to put two and two together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a weird kind of little.
And you
one-off
know that
experience.
he was deceased when you talked to him.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because he was deceased before I worked for the company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he was testing the new guys.
I don't know. Who knows? No, I mean I'd been working there for a little while, so.
Okay. He's just having some fun.
Yeah, I don't know. That was an unusual experience. Fort Wayne. That's the other one, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Kay and I have not been to Fort Wayne yet. We've wanted to go for a long time. And Greg got to go. He was with a friend of ours. I'll let you tell why you were there.
Yeah. So I was
it's
there. Our friend Emmy Jackson builds Mad Max cars. That's his hobby.
And he's a writer too. You should go out look up his books.
Yeah, the super wonderful dude. But he's got between 5 and 8 cars in his yard at any one time that he's turning into these Mad Max vehicles. And he's got a camper that he's done this with. He's got an old Jaguar that he put up on giant truck tires. He's got all kinds of stuff. He's a fan of Miatas and Subarus. Those are
I love it.
some of his favorites. So every year at Fort Wayne they do a car show, and you pull your car in there and you park it inside the grounds of the fort. And outside the actual fort battlements itself, there are a lot of the old buildings, the old barracks and things like that. A lot of them are falling down. They're trying to restore a lot of that stuff, but the roofs are caved in and stuff like that.
And this is not the original fort that became Detroit. It's the second one, I believe, which is still hundreds of years old.
Yes, although
it was built by the British, I think.
It was at least in operation long enough that there was a movie theater on the ground. So I don't know when the actual fort closed.
I'm not sure. I would have to look. I've done some research because I've been doing research into the history of Detroit. But the original fort was closer to the water.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the British got it from the French, they were like, this is not a great place for a fort. And so they moved it up the hill, and I believe that's the fort that's there now.
Yeah, it is, because it is kind of up. It's kind of sunken in with the hills around it.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Sort of how it's.
I'll bet. Because, I mean, we're talking pre-America, or pre-United States.
Yeah.
It's pretty old.
So we were there because Emmy brought several of his cars. He got some friends together. They drove his cars out from where he lives over to Fort Wayne to go and just hang out and let people look at his cars. And then we kind of wandered around and looked at other people's cars and stuff and just made a day of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never been over to Fort Wayne before. That was the first time I was there. But I knew that Fort Wayne is kind of notoriously haunted.
It is.
Yeah.
It's often called one of the most haunted places in Michigan, but so many places make that claim.
Yeah.
That, take that with a grain of salt, I suppose.
And this was one of the only, like, honestly scary haunting experiences that I've ever had, or like paranormal experiences that I've ever had.
Yeah, because you said you won't go back with us.
I don't have the desire to go back, but like I could probably be persuaded to do it. I have no desire to do so.
Okay.
So the way that the fort is set up, there's essentially a big, clear, empty area in the center of the fort, and then there are the battlements around the outside where they have slits where you can shove a gun through or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Gun ports, I guess so. And then that's also where cannons would likely have been.
Yeah.
So they would have rolled the cannons through these ports. So you can go inside there, and you can go on the inside of the battlements and see where these rooms were. And while I had kind of gone through, looked at all the other cars and stuff that were there, and so I said, "Oh, I'll go and wander around the fort for a little bit, see what this is." And I wandered into one of the first rooms on the inside, and it felt like my head was gonna explode. Like there was just this tremendous, not like sinus pressure or anything, but like something was pushing from the inside out.
Like just cranial pressure.
Yeah, and like the closest thing I could think of was, I kind of wondered if that's what it felt like being in there when the cannons were being fired.
Yeah.
That
It would be so loud.
percussion from the cannons
Oh, yeah.
would feel like that. And I kind of got out of that room pretty damn quick. Like I had no desire to go back in there. Got back to the outside of the fort, and then the group that we were with decided that, like, the car show was starting to pack up a little bit. So the group that we were with decided, well, let's take a wander around the grounds. And so I was like, oh man, I don't know if I want to go back in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so dummy me went back in there with them, and
I would go back in just to see if it repeated.
yeah. And I didn't get the same effect, but what I felt was like I was being choked. Not hard, but like it was like somebody grabbing onto the back of your shirt and pulling it back against you and just continuing to do it.
Okay.
Or like leading you around by a rope or something. That's what it felt like. It wasn't like somebody was trying to actually strangle you or anything.
Okay.
And it felt very hostile. Like it felt very...
Get out of here.
Kind of. Like it felt very... Or kind of like, what are you doing here? Sort of thing. But I kind of made it through with the rest of them, and then we wandered around the outside walls of the fort. And then real quick went back in where Emmy's cars were, and we left after that. But yeah, that's not an experience I really need to
repeat. Yeah.
repeat or anything. And I think they do ghost tours and things there that you can do,
I think
if I
they
remember
have.
correctly. The local Society for Creative Anachronism group that I used to play with, they would do some events there too. They would do some medieval like reenactment events that they're involved in there over at Fort Wayne. And I want to say you can camp out there too, if I remember correctly. That there's certain times a year where you can like camp there for some reason.
I don't know. I know they do a lot to get money so that they can restore it and keep it going and stuff, because it's pretty old.
Yeah,
pretty old. I believe that one was built by the British after they won Canada from the French, I want to say. I know it was involved in the War of 1812 as well. When the British won Detroit from the Americans. I believe that's the only U.S. city to be conquered. Or they gave up, too.
Yeah, as they say, because they surrendered right away.
They surrendered pretty quickly, which obviously was to save lives.
Yeah.
But yeah, War of 1812 is pretty bloody. A lot of places around here that were battlefields are haunted and things. You could take your own War of 1812 haunted tour, really, of Southeast Michigan.
Yeah, right.
Between Detroit, Monroe, River Raisin, yeah.
Yeah. But Michigan-wise, those are the couple of ones that I can think of, certainly. I mean, I definitely had like some weird experiences when I lived in New Orleans, and
What are some New Orleans stories?
um,
We can go on a road trip.
yeah, honestly, the big one, and by this time, I was more interested in spiritualism and that kind of stuff, ghosts and things. Um, that time slip experience kind of like kicked off a whole period where I was really interested in that. Maybe
Yeah, I mean, I would want to know like what the heck that was, what happened.
yeah, and partially it was that, partially it was kind of let's see where this goes and whether there are other experiences and things that I end up having. Um, but there was a group of us who were kind of we kind of had our own little, not quite ghost hunting group or anything, but we would kind of wander around campus and do that sort of stuff and see what happened.
Yeah.
Um, and there was so the Tulane University is divided into kind of two main halves, and then there's a street called Ferret that cuts down the middle. So half the campus is on one side of Ferret, the other half of the campus is on the other side of Ferret. And the one side of Ferret where a lot of the older academic buildings are, all like at night always gave me kind of a creepy, weird feeling. And at one point I had not like a breakdown, but kind of like a panic attack almost in the middle of that section of campus. And I kept getting this feeling of things being trapped there, like a group of people being trapped there, stuck there, because of someone else. And this group felt very disparate. It was not a group of people or a group of spirits who were all there from the same time period, or were there from who were all there in life or anything like that. But it was this sort of various spirits who were stuck there, but they were a disparate group. And we would keep seeing the shadow of this person around the lampposts, especially on that side of campus at night. And it was kind of like a shadow person experience, that people have described. But
yeah, and I described shadow experiences in the first part of this podcast when I was with Kay and her husband Aaron.
yeah, but I know a lot of those experiences are often associated with sleep and sleep paralysis and that kind of stuff. And this was, we were wide awake walking around in the evening. This was not a this was definitely not a sleep paralysis experience. And through various things, we eventually figured out that this person that we kept seeing, who always gave off this really malicious feeling. Every time you saw this shadow against the lamppost, it was a really malicious feeling. That this was what was this was the person that was keeping these other people there, that they were stuck in this section of campus for whatever reason. And we narrowed it down to a building that he was associated with, that we would keep seeing him around. That at the time that I was there was like the academic counseling building for the humanities department, I think is what it was. So when you went in there to declare your major and stuff, that's who you had to talk to.
Yeah.
And originally that had been a privately owned restaurant back in the day. And then the university eventually bought that property and bought the restaurant. But they allowed the guy who owned it to keep operating it. And they turned it into essentially what was one of the first dining halls on campus.
Oh, okay.
But this guy eventually started to lose his faculties. And he would do things like serve the students rancid meat. Or meat that had bugs and things in it and stuff like that. And it was eventually the university had to take it away from him, and it was not apparently a peaceful or an amicable split between him and the university.
Yeah.
And we were pretty sure that what we kept seeing was this guy who owned that restaurant, who lost his mind and had it taken away from him, and that it was this malicious. The maliciousness came from that, and that he was keeping these other people stuck there, that he was exercising dominance over these other people because he was so angry.
Yeah, I don't know how he would trap other people there, or where he would get them from.
I think it was just people who themselves had an attachment to the university or to the campus, who, when they passed, their spirits stuck around, but for one reason or another, were not as strong, or were somehow susceptible to being dominated by this other person. That they may have been there otherwise. They may have been there on campus, or they may have been, kind of harmless campus spirits, or whatever you want to call them, because of their attachment to it. In the same way that he was attached to it because of negative emotions, because of this malicious feeling that he had. So they may have been there, but not felt trapped by something else, is my guess.
Yeah,
I don't know. But I mean, we went through, we salted, areas, and we, did kind of the stuff that we could, to try and resolve this experience or this
drive this person out
situation.
or
Or
help the other spirits.
help these other people, get to where they wanted to go, or not be stuck by this person. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was the big one that I can remember. That was kind of traumatic for me, because I was the one that kept having that had this panic attack.
Yeah.
And it felt like all of these other people kind of pressing in on me that were stuck there.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard of mostly houses, I suppose, where that have multiple spirits from various times that have lived in the house, and there's one dominant being who's an asshole.
Yeah.
You run into that. I mean, probably some of the listeners have run into that if they read a lot of true haunt stories.
Yeah.
Especially the books written by mediums about their experiences of mediumship. You run into things like that a fair amount. Even some of the TV shows, we'll hear about that. They'll get EVPs. I remember a couple from, I don't know what TV shows, they do reenactments, and they're listening to EVPs on their little recorder, and it's like a kid going, "Oh, he's coming, who's coming?" And he says, like, John or whatever, and then you hear a man's voice go, "Did you tell them my name?" I remember that one being in one of those old reenactment shows.
Yeah.
And I think I've heard that story repeated elsewhere as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know, like, Sally House. I just not that long ago listened to the Astonishing Legends series on Sally House, and one of their theories was that there are multiple entities in Sally House, and one of them is kind of a malicious, negative entity, and the other, some of the other ones are not, or else that it's that malicious entity pretending to be somebody else. Pretending to be a child, or pretending to be
it's messing with you.
Right.
It's one thing,
but
messing with you.
It's trying to lure you into a false sense of security, or that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So that is entirely, another kind of possibility. Yeah.
I know that's a big question in like the paranormal ghost world, I suppose, is are multiple entities in one location, are they aware of each other? And sometimes it seems that they are, and sometimes it doesn't seem like they are. Mm-hmm. So, big question mark. I don't know.
Yeah. And Sally House is unique because apparently it's like one of the few places where they will almost guarantee that you will have an experience if you go there and do a ghost hunt. Mm-hmm. And you can essentially rent the place to go and do.
Yeah, it's like their bread and butter.
Basically, yeah. It's a historical building, but it is it's just a historical building managed by the city, but it is privately owned, to the best of my knowledge.
That could be.
Yeah.
So
they take you on tours and stuff like that.
There are historical places like that all over
there. But yeah, they will almost if you go there, you do you rent it out for a ghost hunt, and anybody can do it. They will.
I'm sure Kay will.
Yeah.
For like some vacation,
yeah.
He'll talk Aaron into going.
But they will almost guarantee you that you are going to have some kind of experience. That is actually where we were talking about off air a while back, about one of the owners from the 1970s or 80s, where he kept catching fire.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. where not his clothing, the guy himself, and it happens even though he doesn't live there anymore and he does not own this property. He was a renter there. It happens to him in his new place of residence.
Yeah, and that could be something unrelated, that there's just something about his body chemistry, or
Yeah,
because it's difficult for people to. I assume it's difficult for people to catch on fire. It's easy for us to burn.
yeah,
It's difficult for us to catch on fire.
yeah. And it apparently is not like it does not burn his skin or anything. It like he just catches fire. And I believe it was Sightings did a whole series with this guy and his family when he lived in the house, where they would catch on camera with another person there in the room from the Sightings crew, him getting scratches on his face and starting to bleed. Him getting
Yeah.
where it was very clear that he did not touch himself. Nobody else touched this person. Things like that.
Yeah, and I've seen things like that before. Yeah, where video of seeing like a scratch raise on someone's skin and it gets all red and angry. And,
Yeah.
like a welt. Yeah.
The other thing from like when I lived down there, I used to do a lot of automatic writing,
Okay.
which
I never did that.
yeah,
I've often thought about it, but
it's a weird experience. Like the scientific theory behind it, to my understanding, is similar to like why a Ouija board works or why a spirit board works.
yeah.
That there is an autonomic function that your body has that causes it to move.
That's where a lot of channeling experiences come from. There's a pretty famous one, Crazy Wisdom, we just called it Seth, but I believe there's longer words to that. I'll have to go look it up again later. But yeah, there's like a whole section at Crazy Wisdom bookstore in Ann Arbor, which is closed right now, but will hopefully be reopening after all of this. There's a whole section on channeling and Seth, and yeah, it's really fascinating. And a lot of it comes from this automatic writing.
Yeah. Well, so like my experience of it anyway, I could actually like think a question or ask it out loud either way and get a response in many cases. But it's not like I understand spirit possession to be or anything like that.
Right.
But it's your arm moving of its own accord, or your hand moving of its own accord. And usually when I was still doing it, you would start out just drawing spirals on a piece of paper, and then it would start to form letters or pictures or numbers or whatever.
Nope. Some people use drawing too. Same thing, only it turns into a picture instead of words.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was, and I honestly, for the life of me, I can't remember why I stopped doing that. Like I would probably do it again if I had a reason to or something. But it just kind of tapered off. Yeah.
You just found other hobbies.
I don't know, or I didn't have a reason. A lot of that stuff I kind of not fell to the wayside, but started happening less and less to me as I grew older, and you grow out of that time period where you're a hormonal teenager or whatever it is,
you start working more, you have less free time, you have less energy.
And I don't know if like as you age, some of those faculties sometimes shut down, that you no longer.
I mean, they do say that children are more sensitive.
Yeah.
And also that like pregnant women are more sensitive, and some of the theory is, well, one, I mean, women's bodies do get a little more sensitive while they're pregnant. They get nauseated more easily. Their sense of smell seems to increase. All kinds of weird stuff happens when you're pregnant. But on the spiritual side is that the spirit of the baby is not quite there yet. It's sort of straddling. And so the mother, by incubating that thing, has a connection to the spiritual realm.
Sure.
And my mother has said that when she was pregnant with my brother, at least, that she had some experiences. And I mentioned this last time. I'm totally gonna interview her. She's kind of excited about it. She's got some great stories.
Well, we had that experience on your camera phone when your nephew was
It was
first learning
my
your
sister-in-law's
sister-in-law's phone.
Yeah.
Where your nephew was first learning to walk. Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was his first time walking because it was my older nephew who's like 8 now, soon to be 8. He was walking for the first time. Of course, young parents, they record everything. Or at least they do with the first kid. I haven't seen too much with the younger one. But yeah, it was his first time walking, and he just walked across the living room floor. Not too far, he's baby. But there's this light dancing around him.
Yeah, and it's not an orb. It is not what you think of as being like the normal paranormal orb.
It is
sighting.
It's like Tinkerbell.
Yes.
It's a light dancing around him.
And it very clearly is not necessarily interactive, but it very clearly has some kind of intelligent motion.
Yeah, because it's like encouraging him on or something. I mean,
kind of.
It was weird. It was interacting with him.
Yeah.
And you couldn't see it because you can hear my sister-in-law and my brother on the video going, "What is that? Like, do you see that?" And they could see it on the video. They're watching it live on the video.
Yeah.
On the camera as they're recording it, but they can't see it in front of them.
Yeah.
And I know that she went back later and tried to recreate it several times and could not recreate it. So the theory in the family is that was the spirit of my father, but I have no idea what that was.
Yeah.
I could not tell you, but it was just utterly fascinating to watch. It is online somewhere. The quality is not as great as it used to be, just because our computers have gotten better. So older videos are kind of pixelated now. But I did go back and watch that not too long ago, and it was really amazing.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to go back and watch it now and see, like, what was it really that cool, or is that just my memory of it being cool? But no, it still is.
Yeah.
It's very strange. I would like to send that to someone and just say, like, what could this possibly be? Because it is so bizarre. It's not a reflection. It's not like a headlight going by and you see it, the reflection. It's
right.
It's sustained.
And it
it's
goes on
moving.
for a while.
Yeah, it goes on for like the entire time he's walking.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like a one and done flash. It's
No.
It's moving around him, and it's moving around him.
Yeah.
It is right by him.
That's the other experience actually you and I both had. Was when we were in Colon, Michigan. The picture that we got at the Magician's Graveyard. Yeah.
Yep.
So there are two towns in mid-southern Michigan, I guess.
Yeah, it's very much southern Michigan.
Yeah, so kind of near, kind of south of Grand Rapids.
South of
Battle Creek, excuse me.
So it's not far from the Indiana border, truly.
Yeah. Marshall and Colon. Marshall is the home of the American Museum of Stage Magic.
Yeah, which we missed going to.
Yeah.
But we'll go back.
And then Colon is the home of Abbott's Magic Factory, which was originally co-owned by Harry Blackstone Sr. And when I was a kid, I was really interested in stage magic. I lacked the dexterity to do it. But it's a thing that has always been interesting to me.
Me too. I've watched it. I was never. Well, I mean, I would be willing to learn it, but I never got any books out or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But like the mystique around it.
If I had known that was so close
Yeah.
to where I grew up, I mean, I would have gone. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I can't believe my mother didn't know that was there.
Yeah. I didn't know that was there, and I spent most of my life growing up in Michigan. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I lived like 20 minutes away from Battle Creek.
Yeah.
Literally 20 minutes down the highway. My father worked there for several years.
Yeah.
We had no idea it was there.
So you can go to Abbott's Magic Factory, actually. The reason that Harry Blackstone Sr. lived there was his summer home was because the fishing was good. He bought an island and built a house on the island, and then he built his own practice theater so that he could practice his shows in the off season, and then he would have other magicians come and they would practice their shows there. And he invited this magician over from Australia who went in with him on this factory to produce the actual stage magic props and things, which they still do to this day.
Yeah, and I cannot stress how out there in the country this place is.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
It's one of the smallest communities I've ever been in my life, and I've toured the UP. We talked about the Paulding Light already. That's middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So is this place, and they make magic props, and it's awesome.
Well, and they do a big international magicians gathering there every summer in August.
Need to go to.
Yeah. And it's in the gym of the high school.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh,
a large
wow.
part of it is in the gym of the high school there.
And isn't their mascot
A
like,
rabbit in a hat.
Yeah.
Yes. And when we were there, there's all kinds of like magic associated stuff. So like all of the bike, parking things are all shaped like rabbits in hats, and the planters.
It was the
along
planters, yeah.
Along the street where they, the city plants flowers and things are all rabbits in hats and things.
Yeah. They're downtown, which is like,
It's very tiny.
I mean, I cannot stress how I thought Otsego and Plainwell were small towns. Colon does not compare. Colon is Otsego's like the big city compared to Colon.
Yeah. But the other thing that's in Colon is the Magician's Graveyard. And Blackstone Sr., Jr., all of their family is buried there. There are a number of other famous stage magicians and things buried there. There's a couple of TV comedians, I think, that are buried there. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole bunch of performers that was their final resting place, this middle of nowhere place.
It is really beautiful there.
It is.
It is absolutely beautiful there.
And in addition to that, there's a bunch of historic headstones there from the 1800s and things. There's a lot of lumbermen.
Yes.
Who were buried there. There's some Civil War era graves that are buried, are there.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of interesting if you're interested in graveyard type stuff.
Yeah,
if you're interested
gravestones.
in historical gravestones, and you see some really unique sculptural ones there. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's the first time I'd seen a lot of these things.
Yeah.
Like gravestones in the shape of tree stumps.
Yes.
I've never seen that before, and there are a bunch of them there.
Yeah. And they were associated with essentially the lumberman's version of like the Masons. It was a beneficial society kind of thing.
Yeah. Of course, Michigan, lots of lumber.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of Masons too.
Yeah. But I don't usually take photographs in cemeteries. I kind of feel like it's a little bit disrespectful to me. But for whatever reason, I may have handed you the camera because I didn't want to.
You might have given it to Kay,
or I might have given it to Kay.
She's big on photos. So I don't know which one of us took this photo.
Yeah, I don't think it was me. So, and this was taken with a digital camera.
Not a phone. We didn't really have those yet.
Right. Or not ones that were worth a damn.
Yeah.
So we had a picture where there was a brilliant light at the very back of the cemetery.
It looks like it's in the back of the cemetery. If you zoom in, it's not.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's true.
Because we zoomed in pretty damn far.
Yeah.
Because I had Photoshop at the time, and we could actually clean it up a bit and zoom in.
But there's this brilliant light that just appears, and there you can see in the photo there's nothing for it to be reflecting off of. It's not off of a tombstone. It's not off of like the one truck that was there in the cemetery from the maintenance person or the groundskeeper or whoever it was. So we had no explanation as to what this weird flash or glow is, and it doesn't. It's not like a lens flare. It's not anything where you would go, oh well, that's just like the sun at a weird angle on the glass of the lens. Because it doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like a lens flare.
I think the sun was behind us.
It could have been
at that point.
The closest thing I can think of that it looks like is if somebody was shooting a camera flash at you.
Yeah,
that's kind of what it looks like.
It's that kind of thing.
So it's this weird, brilliant flash.
Yeah,
that we captured.
There was one other car driving around, and we did look to see if it was maybe flashing off of their,
reflecting
windshield or something, if we happened to be taking it when they were driving by. But no, because when I zoomed in, it looked like it was hovering over a tombstone.
Kind of, yeah. And you can see, I think you can see, if I remember right, it's been a while since I looked at that picture. You can see where that car is, and it's in a different part of,
I think so,
the cemetery.
Because we did look for that car, because we did know it was there.
Yeah.
We remembered that. And that was the immediate was, well, is it reflecting off the windshield or one of the windows? And no, if you zoom in, of course you zoom in, it gets really
grainy and stuff,
really grainy. But it looked, I remember it looking like it was hovering above a tombstone.
Yeah. So that was I think the other one that I can think of off the top of my head from Michigan.
It looked like to me like Tinkerbell, the little Tinkerbell light that floats around.
You kind of, yeah.
That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a neat trip. And that was when we also took the haunted tour of Marshall, which we'll be talking about Marshall in another episode.
Yeah.
We just needed to re-record that because it got messed up, which we will do.
Well, and now you have that Haunted Marshall book.
Yes, which I had that before. I got it through the library. I believe it came from the Battle Creek Library, maybe Marshall Library. Oh, I think it came from the Marshall Library because there was like a dedication on the inside cover. It was really sweet.
Oh, gotcha.
But with the libraries closed, I couldn't get that again, and I thought, screw it. So I bought it online through Bookbound in Ann Arbor, trying to support them. So yeah, now we have that book, and it's a really good book. Ghost books tend to come in mostly two kinds. It's either a medium who's going into people's houses, which those are very interesting, but they're homes. They're not places I'm going to go visit. So
Right.
while they're interesting, they're not particularly useful to me, at least for this purpose. Or they're ghost stories. They're told like campfire stories.
Right.
They're not investigated. I have come across a few that do come at it more from a scientific side. And Brian Mason, who I've been in contact with on Facebook, he's currently working on another book about the thumb area, I think. So keep an eye out for that. But he comes at it from a skeptic. He doesn't try to explain it. He doesn't do any of the investigations. He does interview some people who did some investigations, and he talks about it, but he just comes at it from a straight, here's what people told me. Here's the story. And a lot of them are public places. Some of them are private homes.
Mm-hmm.
But the people telling the stories are very upfront and open. Some of them are historical homes, so you can drive by or whatever. Maybe don't knock on the door. That might be rude. But it's a really good, solid book. I did want to attack some spots with a red pen just because I'm a proofing editor, and that's what I do for part of my living. But it's a good book. It's definitely one I'd say look past some of the grammar mistakes or the editing and proofing mistakes. Look past that because it's a solid book. And we'll be going over that in the Marshall episode.
I will say I did grow up less than a mile from what is supposedly the most possessed house in America.
Yes, this is one, again, in like the medium books that I've read. A few mediums and psychic ladies have gone into this house.
And it's a pretty famous
it's very famous.
episode of a house being possessed.
Yes.
I don't think it was ever a specific person. I think it was always the house.
It was the house.
To where it's been referred to as like a portal to hell or something.
Yeah,
like
they
that.
say there's a portal to hell in the house or behind the house because it backs up to a cemetery.
It does.
In Dearborn,
where most of my relatives are buried.
Yeah. It's a big Catholic cemetery.
Yeah.
That cemetery, I believe, is how I learned about putting candles on graves.
Oh, okay.
Because it freaked me out. Was it Christmas or something?
No, so it's for
I
all.
don't remember.
It starts at All Souls Day. So,
okay, yeah.
In Catholicism, and it's tapering off more and more and more. And I only know this because we sell these candles, and so I can look at the sales records.
Yeah.
But the younger generation doesn't do this very much.
Which is kind of a shame.
Primarily
honestly.
an older generation thing.
I'm part of that generation that's not doing it, but
yeah. But and it's the same thing with like graveyard wreaths and things like that. People just don't spend the money on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the tradition is you light a candle on the grave that's supposed to go from All Souls Day through the month of November.
Okay.
And then December you switch it out for typically a grave wreath or a grave blanket or a grave pillow.
Okay.
Which is like a evergreen arrangement kind of deal.
Okay.
So it backs up to a very, very large cemetery.
Yes.
Over there.
And it had a sizable enough Catholic sector, or is it all Catholic?
As far as I know, it is at least predominantly Catholic.
And
I don't think you have
there
to
are a
be...
lot more Catholics on this side of the state than there were where
Yeah.
I was growing up.
You don't. I mean, I know you don't have to be Catholic to be buried there.
Yes.
I
mean, you saw the Catholic cemetery when my grandfather was buried.
Yeah.
That was the only Catholic cemetery I had been to.
Mm-hmm. I mean, but it is named after a saint anyway.
Yeah.
So,
this one is itty bitty.
Yeah.
Itty bitty.
But
so
yeah, it's
whether or not my relatives did that, I don't know.
Yeah.
My grandparents might have, but they don't. Catholics are not well received in that area, so they may have downplayed some of the Catholic traditions. Because West Michigan is not friendly to Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
Things may have changed some, but I doubt it. They're pretty Calvinist over there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when I first saw those lights, I was like, "What is? Oh God, what is that?"
And I don't know necessarily what like the meaning behind what the actual candles are supposed to be, but
yeah.
so yeah, essentially the day after Halloween, you're supposed to go and light those and
Mm-hmm.
keep them going. And usually it's a 7-day candle or a 5-day candle, and then you just go out there and you replace it. You have to go out there a couple of times during the month.
Mm-hmm.
Or nowadays you can get battery powered ones. You can get
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, supposedly along the edge of this cemetery, there's a portal to hell.
And nobody like it is not public as to what house it is. Like
No,
you
no,
will not
it's
not
never
find the
been.
identity or address of this house.
No,
matter where you look.
I've
Not that
read
I
about
want to
it.
know.
No, I've read about it in several books, and they've always made a point of saying, "I am not telling you where this house is. I'll just tell you about the house." But it's been on TV. It's been in many books.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you if you look for haunted stories in Michigan, you will come across it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Portal to hell in Dearborn.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of all the spooky experiences I can think of that are associated with Michigan that I've ever had.
I remember when we were on vacation in Seattle, we did the underground tour.
Oh yeah.
I saw nothing. Nobody saw anything, but you saw something.
I saw somebody go around the corner and then disappear.
Yeah.
So this person goes around the corner, and we're not that far behind them.
And I saw absolutely nothing. I was standing right next to you. I
Yeah.
saw absolutely nothing.
And as soon as you go around that corner, you go back into the gift shop. It was at the very end of the tour. So you go like up the stairs into the gift shop. And as soon as we came around that corner, it hit me that the person that I saw go around the corner isn't there. They're not in the gift shop. And I mean, the
I
gift
thought it was earlier in the tour, like when we went into this room.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, that's how I remember it.
Yeah. But it was enough where like we were not that far behind that person. Yeah, following behind them, going around that corner, that person was gone. Whether that was, a ghost, whether that was
A really speedy employee.
I
didn't
know.
see anybody.
Yeah,
I think you were ahead of me,
I could have been.
and
yeah.
I think you were even ahead of the tour. I mean, not by
Yeah.
3 feet. I mean, not.
Yeah, I took a bunch of pictures during that tour too, of some of the. So if you've never been to the Seattle Underground, there are kind of like almost ruins of the original city
It's really cool.
underneath there. It's really neat.
It's really neat.
But there's a lot of stuff that's left intact in its original condition, or left how they found it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that makes for some really good photo opportunities and things. I've got some cool pictures of like old electric signs and things that collapsed and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's really neat.
And so I might have been like going ahead to get a photo or something in one of the corners.
I think so, because I think
the
the tour guide kind of hung back to answer some questions.
could have been. Yeah.
But yeah, you weren't very far ahead of us.
Yeah. So yeah, that was an oddball experience. Certainly, yeah, that was weird. I have not had any here in Ipsy.
Nope. No, me neither. Like, I used to think, like hearing whispers and feeling presences and seeing like shadow people.
Mm-hmm.
Just you felt that that had just happened everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Good, no.
Turns out it was just those couple houses I lived in.
Yeah. Ipsy seems to be pretty chill so far, which is unusual to me because it is a pretty old city. Like it's a city with some history. So, and we've certainly done the cemetery tours and things like that. Not haunted tours, but
and there are definitely some spots in Ipsy that I would like to look into. We went to the Firehouse Museum.
Yeah,
and that one is notoriously haunted. Didn't have any experiences there, but that is where we first saw John E.L. Tenney.
Yes.
Made his acquaintance.
Yeah.
And you told him the time slip story.
I did, and he actually compared it to his time slip story too. Yeah.
Yep.
I know the ladies' library is supposed to be haunted, which is not far from the firehouse.
By the lady it's named after, in fact, and she also haunts, I believe it's Starkweather Hall on campus. She's been spotted there as well.
Okay.
Also named after her. She founded the ladies' library, I believe, or helped found. She co-founded.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she's apparently a busy lady, gets around. But yeah, we'll get into some of that when we do Ipsy. But we need to go around and actually talk to people.
Yeah.
which we'd like to do for a second Ann Arbor one, because it's fun to get that personal touch rather than just me going through books and newspapers and things like that. It's nice to have some personal stories, which is why we wanted to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's all we've got with my chatting with Greg as we're on his first day of unemployment as we're quarantined in our house.
Yeah.
I've been home for almost 2 weeks now. We closed early, but they just closed after the governor gave the announcement. So we're here with the kitties. Memphis
I got to work
me.
longer than some people, so
You did.
I can't, I'm looking at the bright side. Like, I can't complain
Yeah, we got that much.
too much. Yeah, I got, we kept going for longer than some businesses that we know, and, I have a promise of rehire at the very least once we reopen.
Yep.
So,
Whereas
there's
I'm not even unemployed. They just told me not to come to work.
Yeah.
But I'm being compensated. However, we do have a Patreon if someone feels so inclined. Or we can certainly get that set up I don't know if we have it all the way set up yet, but and Cinema Guano also has a Patreon if people want to check out that podcast and support us over there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if we don't have the Patreon set up publicly with Haunted Mitten, we definitely will get working on that. I might need to publish it. I have it set up, but we will figure out all of that stuff because we have all the time in the world now to do that.
People can also purchase our books at various online book retailers.
Yeah, Cogs, Crowns, and Carriages just came out. Gears, Ghouls, and Gauges. It's twin. They were birthed at the same time. Those are now out. And Queen of Clocks and Other Steampunk Tales. Kay is in it. Aaron is in it. You are in it. And I am in it.
Yep.
Yeah. Support people. Support your local bookstores. Buy ghost books. You can buy Haunted Marshall. There's a Haunted Kalamazoo book, which I haven't broken into yet. I purchased that last year, I think. We haven't done Kalamazoo yet, but we will. I currently have the Haunted Lansing book out. I've been told that's a really good one, too. I got that out from the library over a year ago, and I've just had it ever since. I just keep renewing it. But I'll probably end up purchasing that one, too. Maybe I'll share on Instagram some pictures of my haunted books. People can support their local bookstores, order online.
You can also find my last anthology book, which was the Harvey Duckman Christmas special. And then coming up, I think they're still planning on releasing it in April, is Harvey Duckman Volume 4.
They are.
Which Crysta and I are both in.
Yep, we'll both be in that.
Yep.
Buy our books, support us.
Those are both available. Yeah, those will be both. The Christmas special is available on Amazon, at least in ebook format, so you can get it instantaneously. Out of season though it may be. And then the other one, I assume, is probably going to be on Amazon first and then other places later.
Maybe.
That seems to be how that particular publisher
Well, I mean,
releases.
that was for Christmas.
That's true, too.
That could have been oh, crap.
That's true. That did come out, like, the day before Christmas.
Yeah.
So
I think that was a deadline thing.
Yeah.
But could be wrong. And you can buy ebooks through local bookstores sometimes. I know Crazy Wisdom, you can buy ebooks through them. You can buy audiobooks through them. So if you don't want to buy a physical book and you're way into ebooks, you can still support an indie bookstore.
All right, and that was Greg and Crysta. That was a great interview. That was my dog. I probably let it go on a little bit longer than I should have, but I was learning a whole bunch of information that I hope that you guys learned too. I guess we have a new place in Detroit to check out, or in Dearborn, I'm sorry, that I didn't know about before. As for the end podcast stuff, you can find us at Haunted Mitten on all social media. You can email us at contacthauntedmitten@gmail.com. You can find me at K Gray Writes pretty much everywhere. You can find Crysta K Coburn. You could find Greg, I think, as Thomas Gregory throughout social media. If not, I will have him correct me. Yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for putting up with us during this quarantine season. Starting October, we'll be publishing a lot more often. We'll try to stick to a schedule and have more episodes for you as well, including the Marshall one that Crysta mentioned in this episode. So thanks again. Support us on Patreon if you think that we're doing a good job. Otherwise, come check us out. Come interact with us on social media. We would love to hear your stories. Thanks, Michigaels, and happy haunting.